Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Carl and Cymru AS business. I'm going to be talking to you about business opportunities, which is mainly the Unit 1. Try and cover as much of the Unit 1 topic as we possibly can. If you've listened to the recordings before, they'll go through things in a little bit more depth. I'm just going to be summarising everything that we've done over those last few sessions and sort of put some exam questions in there for you as well to give you some context. We're going to start off with business enterprise and looking at enterprise and SMEs. Okay, so enterprise is your term that's applied to any business at all, and it's the starting point of any business. Now there are 4 factors of production, so land, labour, capital and entrepreneurial skill. We'll be looking at sort of that, and here we are looking at enterprise's willingness to undertake new ventures and show initiative with a view to gaining rewards, and those rewards generally tend to be profit. Now, what does SME mean? Well, it means a small and medium-sized enterprise. Now, it's defined by the number of employees, turnover and net worth shown on the balance sheet. So the European Union classifies a business size is shown in the box below. So this is what the European Union kind of classes small, medium and businesses or enterprises. And basically your assets take away your liability, so things that you owe is your net worth. Now, for a medium-sized business, the number of employees are less than 250. You've got to have a less than 50 million turnover, and your net worth on the balance sheet is less than 43 million. This is in euros, by the way, not in pounds. A small business is classed as anything under less than 50 number of employees, turnover of less than 10 million euros, and net worth balance shown on the balance sheet of less than 10 million. And then you've got a micro business or enterprise, which is less than 10, less than 2 million turnover in euros and less than net worth balance of 2 million as well. So to start off with, especially those people that have done GCSE, you should know what an entrepreneur is, and that's a person who spots any opportunity and shows initiative and willingness to take risks in order to benefit from potential rewards. It's make the use of resources available to them, and it's creating and setting up a business starting with the idea that these can result in brainstorming, personal experience, business expertise, experience and market research. Now, in a role of an entrepreneur, are different things that they can do. They can generate an idea, they can asking if the idea can add value, it can be conducting market research, it can be drawing a business plan, deciding on a legal structure, whether you're going to go as a sole trader, partnership, a company. It could be raising finance. And now running and developing a business will also involve a number of activities, for example, generating a customer base, designing a marketing mix, sourcing supplies, managing stock, keeping financial records, abiding by legislation, so laws, and employing staff. So characteristics of an entrepreneur. So these are things that tend to be in the personality of a person. It's maybe things that not necessarily can be learnt very easily. So things like an opportunity spotter, that they are creative, they show initiative, they're a risk taker, maybe a positive thinker, hardworking, self-motivated, a decision maker, a visionary, so they can see where they want things to go. They're enthusiastic and they can be determined and persistent. Skills slightly different. So skills are things that should and could be learnt and maybe get better with experience. So communication, whether that be written, verbal communication, literacy, numeracy, information technology, so working with digital technology, organisation and making sure you're organised, problem solving and teamwork are the skills. So again, if you've done GCSE and during the course of this course, you should know what stakeholders are. So these are anyone that has an interest in the actions of the business. So it could be affected, or that they could be could affect or could be affected by a business. So these include things like customers, employees, shareholders, the government, community, suppliers and financial institutions, places like banks. Now, stakeholders have got to be considered when making decisions, because this can actually help resistance to change. Now, businesses use stakeholder mapping to help inform decisions, and we went through stakeholder mapping in one of the previous PowerPoints. And stakeholder mapping maps the relevant power of each stakeholder against the degree of interest. Now, this can help managers on how important each stakeholder group is actually. Let's have a look at some examples around this topic for exam questions. Oops, let's just go back there. Okay, so we have got 5 years ago at the age of 16, and with just £200, Joe Charman started his own business, Pilot Plus, which produces airport and flight simulation software. This software is used to train pilots on a computer before they fly into real airports. Now, Joe has a degree in business and he manages a team of 3 employees and has 7 products in his portfolio. Joe wants to develop his product portfolio and is looking for sources of finance to achieve this expansion. So the question is, with reference to Joe Charman, describe 2 characteristics of an entrepreneur. So we're looking at those. If we go back, we're looking at these things here. Okay, so we're looking at communication, literacy, etc. Let's just go back again. Okay. So the kind of things that you could have written in order to get your full marks. So you're getting 2 marks for your AO1, which is knowledge, and 2 marks for your AO2, which is your context. So 1 mark for identification of the characteristics and 1 mark for the description that applies to Joe Charman. So it could be that you chose initiative, and then you talk about the fact Joe Charman was able to spot a gap in the market when he started his own business, producing airport and flight simulation software which used to train pilots on the computer before they fly the real world. So you're basically here, you're taking the context and applying it to the question. So that's going to be really important when you're answering any of these business questions, is that you are really looking at the actual scenario that you're given and all the information as you can. So you could have said risk taker, initiative, determined, hardworking, organisation, could have been things like that. So let's look at business planning. So business planning is, these are the components of business plan. Is an important part of setting up any business, and it's used both internally, so you as the business owner, and also by banks if you want, or external investors if you're wanting to get any more money invested in the business. Now, the components of a business plan include things like an executive summary, which is a synopsis of the entire plan, looking at the most important points, the business and the products or services, the market size, share, competitors, marketing strategy, the skills of the entrepreneur and of the complete employees, operations, and financial forecasts. Now, the purpose of the business plan is to secure funding. So like banks, potential partners, venture capitalists, business angels are going to want to see a business plan. So if you think about The Apprentice, for example, if you ever watched that programme, you'll know towards the end of this series, when they've whittled it all down, they all kind of come with their business plan to basically plan out what their business is. And that's really important for anyone investing in a business. So if you're wanting external finance, you've got to have that important business plan. You've got to ensure that the firm develops a healthy financial structure. It's there to identify any problem areas that the business might face. So you're kind of thinking about ahead, and you're thinking, right, what problems could we face, and trying to come up with solutions for it, so it's not going to be a shock. It could be a focus to set targets and check on firm development, and it's to provide realistic expectations. So we look at those SMART targets. So SMART targets are things like that are specific, that are measurable, achievable, realistic, and that they're time-based. So let's have a little look at some markets. So a market, what is a market? Well, a market is any place that buyers and sellers will come together to exchange goods or services that would normally be exchanged of money at a set price. Now, the nature of a market is numerous forms, so it could be local, national, physical, electronic. And the examples include things like corner shop, stock exchange, housing market, internet, online retailing, eBay, or ASOS. So what is competition? So this is the number of firms that are operating in that same market and that are competing to sell similar products to the same target market. The types of markets that you've got, if I just bring these down, is that you've got local or global. So this is the business selling to small geographical area, so like your local butchers, or a multinational business such as Nestle, for example. You've got your mass or your niche, so this is like your large or your small target market. You've got trade or consumer, which is selling to other businesses or private individuals. So that's trade when you're actually selling to other businesses. You've got product or service. So products are physical, tangible products like a car, television, table, and services are non-physical and intangible, as we call them. You can't touch them. So you think like teaching, financial consultancy, hairdressing, and then you've got seasonal as well. Okay, and these sales peak at certain times of the year. So like B&B bookings, for example, peak maybe in the summer months. It could be the sale of Christmas trees peak before Christmas. So what is market segmentation? So this is market segmentation occurs when the market is split into subgroups of consumers with similar characteristics. Now this has helped to identify different types of consumers and different wants and needs. So segmentation methods include your demographic, your geographic, your income, and your behavioural. Now, your demographic segmentation identifies subgroups of the population based on the demographic profile. For example, things like age, gender, level of education, race, religion, family size, stage of life. And your demographics look at the social and economic characteristics of individuals and the households. Now, not every business will use demographics or all demographics. If we think about the car business, so they won't use things like race, and they won't use demographics like age, or religion, because if we think about age, and we think about the simple Ford Fiesta, you are going to have 80-year-olds driving that car because they're reliable, they're cheap to run. You're also going to have 18-year-olds driving that car, again, because they're cheap, reliable, and easy to run. So age doesn't really come into the car market. So you've got to kind of think about, obviously, the business and what sort of demographics that they would use in order to kind of split the market. You've got competition. So the competitive environment is a degree of competition in the market and buying and selling powers of customers and supplying within that market. Now you've got the market structure, which is a number of firms within an industry and the way in which those businesses behave. So like differentiating products, for example. Now you've got a monopoly, occurs when one firm dominates the market. This word I find really difficult to say. So oligopoly occurs when a few firms dominate the market. Apologies about that. I find that word really difficult to say. And monopolistic competition, I'm getting tongue-tied, occurs when there are many firms in the market, but there are some form of product differentiation. And that's kind of how a little diagram. So a monopoly. So this is your new product development is not affected by competitors. The price leaders, they can charge high prices, but often restricted from doing so by government regulation. Monopolies will use promotion to inform and persuade, and they can increase sales revenues through increasing market size. Now, how monopolies distribute and sell goods and services depends on the type of product. So, like example, water companies must supply water to their region. Now, you've got duopoly. Now, this exists when there are only two firms in the market. So, like monopolies, duopolies can also exploit customers and charge higher prices. Now, there are some videos on the recordings. I don't think they recorded very well actually on the thing. So there are some links, I think, from to those videos about duopolies and monopolies. So it might be worth looking at those. You've got similar barriers to entry that exist in monopoly markets also affect duopolies, and duopolies tend to compete on non-price competition such as promotion. Now, duopolies are often accused of collusion. Okay, so making agreements between two others that restrict competition, and this is illegal, and firms that collude can be heavily fined. Right, oligopoly, oligopoly, I think it is. I always find that word really, that and conglomerate, which I've learned how to say, but I always find this word extremely hard to say easily. So this exists when there's only a few firms in the market, okay, and it can exploit customers by charging higher prices. Now, they have barriers to entry and exit, particularly through advertising, and they tend to compete on non-price competition such as promotion. There may be an element of collusion as well. Now, you've got to take into account the reaction of competitors when making decisions regarding prices. For example, if one firm cuts price, then the others are likely to follow suit, resulting in lower income for the market as a whole. So it's unlikely to lower price as a long-term strategy. You've got monopolistic competition. Now, monopolistic competition exists when there are a large number of firms in the market selling differentiated products. So this leads to a small degree of monopoly power as each firm offers something different to others. Now, in this type of market, barriers to entry are low. Therefore, it's easy for firms to enter the market and create strong competition. The mix between monopoly power and competition leads to terms monopolistic competition. Now, firms within this market will try and brand their products. This might be through the building up of a reputation. There are numerous examples of this type of competition, such as hairdressing, restaurants, health and beauty industry. We look at demand and what demand is. So it's the amount society is actually willing to be able to buy at a set price at a given point. Now, a normal good is where if the price rises, demand will fall, and vice versa. There is negative correlation. Now, the two variable, price and demand, move in the opposite direction to each other. Now, the relationship between price, quantity, demand can be shown using the demand curve. And the demand curve is a graphical representation of the relationship between price and the quantity demand. The curve shows quantity demand for a good at any given price over a period of time. And as price falls, quantity demand rises, and as price rises, quantity demand falls. Now, this is the demand curve. So the y-axis and the x-axis quantity. Then you draw the demand curve downward sloping from left to right and label it D. To find the quantity demand at any given price, you select the price, which is on the y-axis, and you draw a dotted line to the demand curve, and then a dotted line down towards the x-axis to show the quantity. Now, a change in price is shown by the movement along the demand curve. So a change in price from P to P1 is shown by movement along the demand curve, lowering the quantity demand from Q to Q1. So you can kind of see that. So as the price goes up, the demand is less. So a change in price from £10 to 15, for example, is shown by a movement along the demand curve. The quantity demand falling from 100 units to 120, from 100 to 120 units. So if you think from £10 you wanted 120, and then for £15 it was 100 units needed. So we look at price elasticity of demand, which is also called PED for acronym's sake. This is to measure how responsive demand is to change in price. Now, there's an inverse relationship between price and demand. As price goes up, demand goes down, and as price goes down, demand goes up. Now, the question is, by how much? Is the change in demand more than proportional to the change in price or less than proportional? And that's what we need to look at to see whether it's actually worth doing. So if price increased by 10%, demand falls by 5%, the PED is inelastic as the fall in demand is less than the increase in price. However, if the price increases by 10%, the demand falls by 13%, the price is elastic as the fall demand is greater than the rise in price. Now, price elastic demand means that change in price will lead to more than proportional change in demand. So this means the demand is sensitive to price changes. Now, price inelastic demand means the change in price will lead to less than proportional change in demand, and the demand is not so sensitive to changes in the price. So if you have an elastic product, then you are better off raising the price because you're not actually having that much effect on your actual incomings. So in an A-level exam, you could be asked to do a calculation. This will be covered again in Unit 3. So PED can be calculated by using this formula. So you've got the percentage change in quantity demand by the percentage change in price, which will give you the PED. Now, a newsagent sells 200 cans of Coca-Cola a week at a price of 50p. The newsagent raises the price of the Coca-Cola to 60p and the demand falls to 180 cans. What is the PED for this product? So if we look at that, so you've got your change in demand divided by the original demand times 100, which is gives you minus 10 or 10%. Then you've got the change in price divided by the original price, and that gives you 20%. And then percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, and that will give you the PED, which in this case is minus 0.5. So the answer is minus 0.5, as a 20% change in price has led to less proportional change in demand of just 10%, and the cans are therefore said to be price inelastic. So let me just go back to that. If the PED is less than 1, that would mean that the product is inelastic. If it is more than 1, so if this was minus 1.4, for example, that would mean it's an elastic product, and the price change is more than proportional and not less than. So factors influencing PED is the availability of substitutes. The closer substitutes and more that are available, the higher the price elasticity of demand. The price of competitor goods. If the price of goods in the competition with a product increase, this will affect the demand and the price elasticity of demand. And time. The longer the time period, the higher the price elasticity of demand. Given more time, other firms have the ability to produce similar products, and customers have more chance to adapt to their buying habits. The factors influencing your PED, you've got branding. By creating brand loyalty, firms know that their customers will be willing to pay more. So if you think about things like Nike, Heinz, people are willing to pay more for Heinz tomato ketchup than if they were to Asda's own. Income, if the consumer income are higher, then the issue of price becomes less important. People aren't, especially with the cost of living crisis currently, there may be some people that are watching what they're spending. And then the nature of the good. Is it a luxury good? Will be price elastic, as demand will be more sensitive to change in price, and necessity good will be price inelastic because demand is going to be less sensitive to change. Now, problems of forecasting price elasticity of demand is that a product is constantly changing in a dynamic world. And it's very difficult for firms to measure because difficulty in finding accurate information. Price elasticity changes over different price ranges. Price elasticity will change over the period of an economic cycle, and it will be affected maybe by things like a recession. Tastes and fashions change, and they're constantly changing, and competitors don't stand still. They're continually improving existing products. Let's have a little exam question on this particular topic of markets. So the nature of markets in which business operate varies. Some markets have high levels of competition where others do not. An example of a competitive market is a dairy industry in Wales. Most of the milk in Wales is produced by small independent family farms who will receive a set price per litre from their customer. Outline what is meant by a competitive market, and then for a 6-mark question with reference to the dairy industry. So this is important. So you're looking at giving reference to the dairy industry. Explain the key features of a perfectly competitive market. Now, I didn't massively go over a perfectly competitive market in this particular PowerPoint, but I did in one of the previous PowerPoints if you wanted to go back to that. But we'll just go through this. Okay, so outline what is meant by a competitive market. So your competitive market, you're getting 2 marks, 1 mark for each valid point. So you kind of just need to expand using words like therefore are good to sort of help you try and expand your point. The competitive market is one where there is numerous producers that compete with one another. So that's 1 mark. To provide goods and services consumers want and need, or a number of marketing strategies can be used to gain customers' market share. For example, competitive pricing. So you just need to add on. I would try, if I was you, you know, for doing 2 mark questions. If you can get 2 sentences in there, you're likely to gain your 2 marks. The next one was a 6 mark question, so just thought it'd be useful for you to see sort of the grid for that. So you're getting 2 marks for your AO1, 2 marks for your AO2, and 2 marks for your AO3. You're probably going to want to do maybe 2 smallish paragraphs around this. And your AO1, good knowledge of the key features of a perfectly competitive market, good application of application to dairy industry, which is your AO2, which is context, and then AO3 is your good explanation of the perfectly competitive market. So this is the what you could have put something in this mark scheme. So there are a large number of dairy farmers and not one single producer can influence or dictate the market. Also, like producers, not one customer can dictate the market either. They are price takers. Only one dairy farmer and one consumer cannot decide the price of goods or decide the quantity that will be produced. All the dairy farmers can do is produce the milk and accept whatever the current price is for the milk. They do not get to determine the price they will want to sell the milk for. There are no barriers to entry or exit, as dairy farmers are free to leave or enter the market at any time, and the goods provided by dairy farmers are homogeneous. This is no difference between goods sold by one dairy farmer or another. The goods are therefore generally quite similar, and there's no way in telling the goods apart, because at the end of the day, milk is milk, isn't it, from a cow. You can obviously slightly kind of differentiating with like organic milk and things like that, but there's very little kind of difference between those. So those are the kind of things that you would be putting in there. Right, so you got market research. So market research is a collection and analysis of data and information to inform a business about the market. Now, data collected and analysed is used for identifying customers' needs and wants, quantify likely demands, plan resources to match anticipation demand, gain insight into consumer behaviour and spot trends in the market and inform the marketing mix. So we should be quite familiar with what primary research is. It's also named field research, and this is first-hand data that did not exist before, and therefore it's original data. So it's got to be stuff and research and data that's been collected by the company themselves. The example of market research are things like surveys, questionnaires, in-depth interviews, focus groups, and maybe observations. Secondary market research, again, is called desk research, and it's already been done and undertaken by other organisations and therefore exists already. So examples of this as secondary market research includes National Local Government Office for National Statistics, market research organisations, professional bodies, trade unions, international bodies, academic organisations, newspapers, and the internet. Limitations of your market research, though, is that your past trends may not be fair indication of the future, and accuracy of research findings, so you may not have done a big enough sample, for example. Dependent upon ability to correctly analyse findings, then you've got the financial and opportunity costs, and then you've got bias, maybe questionnaire bias, sampling bias, maybe respondent bias, so like exaggerating or not actually telling the truth. Let's have a little look at an exam question around this particular topic. So having an understanding of the marketplace is important to aid the survival of a new business. Market research can include both primary and secondary methods. However, it is vital to ensure the data is gathered reliable and free from bias. With the use of examples, describe the difference between primary and secondary methods of market research. So that's a pretty straightforward question. And you should probably, I would hope, find that fairly straightforward to answer. So 4 marks, AO1 for all of them. You're getting marked for understanding of primary research, and then a mark for valid example of primary research, and then same for secondary. Okay, so couple of sentences for each. Again, 4 marks of 4 sentences, so that's what you should be trying to aim for. So primary research or field research gathers first-hand information. The data gathered is new, directly relevant to the needs of the business. Methods include questionnaires, interviews, focus groups. You don't have to like list all of those, but giving some examples of what primary research could be. Secondary research or desk research involves the use of previously collected information that has not been gathered specifically for the business, but it's adapted. Methods include official publications, industry magazines, internet reports. You can get some examples there. Okay, so that's how you would get those 4 marks from that particular question. Another question is outline the importance of avoiding bias when conducting market research. So looking at that, you're getting 3 marks for your AO1. You're getting a mark for understanding what bias is, and then a mark for each valid point made on the importance of avoiding bias, max 3 marks. So bias is something that causes data within a sample to be weighed towards one side, such as statistical bias occurs when sampling has overweighed towards one subgroup. For example, maybe too many teenagers between 16 and 19 within the research sample, which then skew the results. This means that the sample is not representative of the views of the target market as a whole group, and therefore the data may not be statistically valid. It's important, therefore, to gather the data from a sample that reflects the whole population to avoid bias. If a researcher can recognise and limit both participant and researcher bias, the data produced is likely to be more accurate, resulting in impartial data. And when conducting market research, the information is then given to others so that they can learn from it. If there is bias in the research, then there's those who make decisions from that research. So you kind of, I would say, you put in what bias is, and then talking about how you could maybe avoid bias, and looking at, making sure you don't have too many of one subgroup, that you make sure that you have a fair sample where you're not leaning towards any particular target, any subgroup. If that would probably be useful. Okay, so let's have a little look at business structure. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm hoping I can get through to the end, and if I don't, obviously the PowerPoint will be uploaded later on, so you could actually look at that a little bit later. So business structure, so this includes different structures with a business. So from GCSE, if you did GCSE, you know that there are sole traders, there's companies which are like private and public limited companies, you've got your private sector and public organisations, and you've got non-profit organisations such as charities. You've also got partnerships in there as well, which kind of comes under sole traders or partnerships. So let's look at the public sector and the private sector. Okay, so your private sector is the economy that is owned and controlled by private individuals or groups, rather than the government. So sole traders, private limited companies, public limited companies, partners as well. The public sector is a sector of the economy that is owned and controlled by the government rather than individuals or groups of individuals. So state education, National Health Service, other services such as police, army, navy and air force. So you've got sole traders, and these are benefits and disadvantages of being a sole trader. So your benefits are It's really cheap and easy to set up. All profit go to the sole trader. You've got autonomy in decision making. Financial records remain private. Motivation is high because you are the one who has set up the business. Disadvantages, though, that you've got unlimited liability. You've got limited capital for investment because it's just you. Little specialist skill as the owner is jack of all, maybe jack of all trades. Will have to buy in maybe specialists. Difficult to find cover when ill or you want to go on holiday. Although sole trade, you can employ people, it's just that they won't have any ownership of the business. If you decide to take on a partner, the benefits are that its risks, costs and responsibilities are shared between however many partners you've got. It's generally between 2 and 20 people. There are some exceptions, for example, solicitors, estate agents that are able to take on more than 20 partners. More scope for specialist skills. You've got simple and flexible. You've got financial records remain private, and you've got more capital can be raised than a sole trader. Disadvantages, though, again, you've got unlimited liability like a sole trader. Arguments can occur with decision making. If a partner dies, resigns or goes bankrupt, the partnership will dissolve, and trust becomes a significant element between partners. A written agreement between the partners should be drawn up, and this is called a deed of partnership. Private limited companies, advantages, you've got limited liability, which means that your personal possessions are not going to be in the firing line if something goes wrong. You've got a separate legal identity, so a company can own assets, it can own machinery, it can own debt. More flexible than a PLC, which is your public limited companies. Your financial records remain relatively private. More capital can be raised through the sales of shares as a company than you could do if you're a sole trader or a partnership. Disadvantages, though, it's more complex to set up due to the increased legal requirements. You've got some loss of control because shareholders have voting rights, and you're unable to sell shares to the public or the general public. Public limited companies, again, advantages of limited liability, same as a private limited company. You've got a separate legal identity, you perceive status as a PLC, and more capital can be raised through the sale of shares because you can float your shares on the stock exchange. Now, lack of privacy as financial performance is available for all to view. More complex to set up because of the legal requirements, and you've got ongoing administrative costs as well. You've got some loss of control as shareholders have voting rights, and then there is risk of hostile takeover as well with public limited companies. Now, I did have a question, but I don't know where that is. So the question is, evaluate the factors that affect the choice of the legal structure of a business. So here you're looking at a 10-mark question, AO3 and AO4. For band 3, you're looking at an excellent analysis of the factors that affect the choice of a legal structure of the business. The analysis is fully detailed. Excellent well-reasoned evaluation of factors that affect the choice of legal structure of the business. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this because obviously I've only got 5 minutes left, or 7 minutes left just about. But you can kind of have a look. If you want to go back and pause this, you're more than obviously welcome to have a look at the kind of things that you would be writing about. But things are like age of business, maybe the need of finance will affect whether or not you're going to, what sort of business you're going to operate, whether you want limited liability, unlimited liability, etc. So have a look through that to sort of help you construct those questions. Okay, so we're going to look at business location now. So these are factors influencing the startup location decision. So several factors that affect where a business chooses to locate, and these are like things like costs, infrastructure. So it all depends on obviously what your business is. So you know, the costs of where you're setting up is going to be a big kind of thing, like Do you need a premises? Do you need a premises in a city centre? Do you need quite a big premises that's away from a city centre? It all depends on obviously what the business is, and obviously that's going to have effect on costs. Infrastructure, so it depends on you know, whether you need like motorway infrastructure, transport, whether you need telecoms in order to run your business well. So, you know, setting up a business in the, you know, Snowdonia region, for example, and you're very reliant on, you know, you need to have fibre optic broadband there in order to run your business. You know, middle of Snowdonia isn't really going to be the ideal place for your business. If obviously you're doing a hiking business, then Snowdonia might be a very good place for you to set up the infrastructure for your business. So it all depends on obviously what the business is. The market, so is the buyers and sellers coming together to exchange goods or services? Is the significance to market firm location? Does it matter where you set your business up to the market? So if you think about, if you're, for example, setting up a new winery, do you think having that winery in the middle of Blackpool is going to be the same as having a winery in the middle of Cornwall? So, you know, there are certain markets, certain businesses that, depending on what you're doing, has a massive impact on the actual business itself and the location. Technology, so is it, are you going to need teleworking? Are you going to need good such internet, etc. for that? And then qualitative factors, so maybe based on personal desires of the person setting up the business. You know, very important for small businesses, but their significance will depend upon their owner of the business. As you become bigger, that probably becomes less important. So that was just very, I'm just going to go, I've got a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to go back to this question. So looking at the legal structure of the business and evaluating that. So if we take the first paragraph, for example, so age, many businesses change their legal structure as they become older. So when we talk about that, so a business might start off as a sole trader, might start off as a partnership, and as a business becomes more established, because as we probably know that one of the first targets for any new business is survival. As you come from a sole trader, as you grow, as you become more established, you then may decide to become a private limited company in order to protect your assets, and so that the business has its own legal identity. And then as you maybe grow from that, you then could look at them becoming a public limited liability company as well. So the age of the business is going to be a factor. Need of finance is going to be a factor. So as a sole trader, you're obviously going to have less sort of investable powers, if you like, or people are going to be less likely to invest in you than if maybe you had maybe partners or that you were a company. Again, looking at limited liability, whether the owners want to have their assets protected, so that if anything does go wrong, if for example there's any kind of lawsuit, you're sued for anything, that people can't come after your own personal house, your cars, that sort of thing. It depends obviously with the degree of control what you're wanting. As a sole trader, you'll have full control of your business. As you then become into a company and that you have more shareholders involved, then your control over your business is then diluted. Also the nature of the business, so the type of business activity may influence the choice of legal structure. So like household services such as plumbing, decorating and gardening tend to be sole traders. Professional services such as accountancy, legal advice and surveying are usually offered by partnerships. And the reason that these activities choose a particular type of legal structure is because of the benefits they can gain as a result. Okay, and then there's other factors that you could obviously have a little look at as well. Okay, so now 6:15, so that is the whistle stop tour of that, and just having a little look at some exam questions. But certainly I would say the important thing here to remember is do have a look at exam questions. That's going to be really important, and have a look at what you can do with those exam questions as well.